Good morning. Happy Sunday, everybody. Steph and I are here. Welcome. And we are going to be talking this morning about whatever crosses our path. Chris is traveling this morning, and Katie had an obligation, so they won't be joining us. They will be missed, but we will have fun any which way. So let's dive in. How was the morning? Let's start there.
Oh, the morning. Oh my gosh. What is it lately with, you know what, just a strange word just came in for me, and it was discombobulation.
There's been a lot of that lately.
That's really kind of what it feels like. It doesn't feel bad necessarily. There's no like heavy negative, not for me, not in my field.
Yep.
But things have felt, I have been able to feel very viscerally the rearranging in my field, in my environment, in my timeline. And it's showing up in a funky way as discombobulated energy, things shifting in weird ways, plans changing, things not working. It's, I don't know, it almost feels to me like retrograde to the nth.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry about the barking. That might happen from time to time. Edward, honey, hush. Come here.
Ed feels it too.
Please hush. Stop that. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. I have had that in my field, I'm going to say, for, oh gosh, at least a month, maybe a month and a half. A feeling of discombobulated is a good word. Lack of clarity in certain areas, and understanding the need to just kind of move with what shows up, whatever that is, take the ride, and not label it, which I think is super important. Last time we were talking about the stories that we tell ourselves, not label it and not make any assumptions about, whether it's quote good or bad, which I don't really believe there's any such thing.
Yeah.
It takes something. How do you stay in the flow when that's going on? What do you do to not
immediately my mind went to breath work.
Is there anything
I find myself relying heavily on my breath?
Yeah,
I do. In any instance where I can feel uncertainty is the word that's coming in, because that's where we start to have expectations of how something should go, and the nervousness. And if we allow ourselves to take that path, we can end up there feeling really like a fish out of water.
Mm-hmm.
And the second that I feel that, I take myself to my breath. I have to. It's become a second nature to me. And that helps. It helps immensely. For me, it does.
No, it does. I honestly think it might be the single greatest tool that we have for almost anything, because it can literally take you to different places.
Mm-hmm.
It can change your physiology, change your mental field, your energetic field. It changes everything. I was talking to Emily the other day and realized she actually said to me, "Are you holding your breath?" I was like, "Yes, I am."
You were holding your breath?
Yeah. I used to live that way. I used to do that all the time, and then spent a concerted amount of time and effort. I would set alarms to focus. Am I breathing? Am I breathing deeply? And it only takes a short while to reinstate that habit if you let go of it, or even start it anew. But I find it helpful to have outside stimulus, an alarm or something, some sort of something that reminds you. Yeah.
I can feel my mom coming in as we talk about this.
That's awesome.
She was such an intuitive, is such an intuitive. She's not here on earth with us anymore. But I'm more connected to her than I have ever been. And as I began experiencing her energy in new ways after she passed, and that really was my first profound personal experience with energy and with another being who is no longer here on the earthly realm. Breath. Every so often, just throughout the day, just as a general rule, right? She would, if she noticed one of us being not ourselves, or and I say one of us, I'm assuming that it applied to everyone, and she had these conversations with all of us kids, but I can really only truly speak for myself. It was a question she asked me quite a bit. Sis, when is the last time you took a deep breath? And I would always watch her breathe. She would be sitting, and it could have been anything that she was doing. It wouldn't have mattered what it was, if it was work or if it was creative or if it was, a combination of both. If she was in a moment, having an emotional moment that she was processing, and she would just breathe. And I don't recall having that experience with other adults growing up. I don't recall anyone reminding me to breathe besides my mom. How often do we remind each other to breathe? Like really breathe, not just that automatic natural function that we can't help but allow to take place because it's just part of how our body works, but actual intentional breathing.
Yeah, I was noticing as you were doing it, it's interesting the impact that has when someone does that in your environment. It automatically, I find myself automatically doing it. It's like that you're doing it as an invitation. I didn't grow up with people doing that or any awareness of that in any way, shape, or form. Um, I wonder how many of us did. Doesn't really matter, but what a great practice that is. I mean, it just, you can literally breathe pain out of your body.
Mm-hmm. Anytime I would be upset or come to her with something, or it like brings a little something up. That moment as a young girl where you're like, oh, I gotta go talk to my mom. And the first thing when I would show up, she'd go, just take a deep breath. And I said it once already, she was so intuitive. She didn't have a true, I suppose, how do I say this? She wasn't aware of it. She was aware of what she was doing and the value in it, but never spoke about intuition. Never spoke about being intuitive. Never spoke on it. Never went, oh, you saw that coming, didn't you? Or, those little things that we can say to each other to kind of nurture that, oh, you felt that before it even happened, and acknowledge and validate. There wasn't any of that, but there were these practices that 2020 vision has, pieced together and aligned that just natural gift that she had, and was not speaking on it or aware of it in that way when she was here on earth alive. And it was her passing and her illness and her connection to me and my experience with her after she passed that was my awakening. Was the culmination, the coup de grace. That's so interesting to think about.
What a gift. What a that sounds like a strange thing to say about your mother passing, but
No, but it is. It is. It's the most profound gift I've ever been given by her. The connection through that process of her leaving the earth. We were connecting in a completely different way because she was so sick. It's very interesting.
how do you connect since she has departed this plane?
I feel her all the time. All the time. It's like she's never left.
What do you feel? How do you know? Like, what is it that you're feeling when that happens?
I can feel, hmm, I love you for asking me that question because I don't know that I've ever really tried to put it to words. I can feel the way that I felt the first time I knew I was connected to her after she passed, in an amplified version every time I feel her since. And it was, for me, this, oh, it's as I sit here and think about it, it's this combination of things. This just knowing, like you would know if you were sitting next to your mom, you'd know what that felt like to be in her energy. But also, I have smells come in, and I had never had that happen before my connection with her.
So when these things happen for you, are you is it so strong, and from go, was it so strong? Both two separate questions. From go, was it so strong? And if so, or if not, now is it so strong that you wouldn't doubt, or have you had experiences that have helped you to not doubt, or how has that worked for you?
Hmm.
And you also mentioned, when you were answering the last question, you mentioned that it was exponentially greater than the first time. That's how you feel it. So, but what was that first time? What was that like?
The first time was, I think maybe I've told this story. I don't know if I've told it on here. Maybe I have. Um, when I was walking through the kitchen and the light on the propane tank began shining and I could see it outside, just bright, 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 gleaming light in the dark. And it had been sitting there for days. It was a solar powered light that my husband had found, and we were just leaving it out there to see if it would ever catch a charge and turn on. I believe it had been there for over a week. And this particular night was right around the time when I knew mom was really close to passing over, to leaving her physical body, her soul passing over. And I was not there with her, but she came to me that night. And I had been thinking of her already. I could feel this, like, oh, I can feel her kind of calling out to me. And I'll be honest, it scared me a little bit because I'd never experienced that before. And feeling my mom and hearing my mom when she wasn't there. And it was like, oh, well, what do I do with this? This is the very first experience I'd ever had like that. And as I'm trying to figure out what to do with this experience that I'm having and asking myself all the questions. Is this real? Am I making this up in my head? What is going on? Am I losing my mind? Like, right? For me, it was like, and I'm walking through the kitchen and this light turns on outside. The moment I'm having this doubt, this questioning, this, I'm losing it. What's happening? No, you're not losing it. Mm-mm. I'm right here with you. And that light just turned right on. And the second that it began to shine, I knew, and I could feel her at that point then. And I just started tears and like, and I'm just looking at this light, and a lightning strike comes down in the background, far off in the distance. And as it strikes, it looked like it took the light with it. The light went out.
That's powerful.
And I'm just standing there looking out the window going, oh, this is so real. That is rad. Thanks, Mom. Like, oh my gosh, how do I ever explain this to anybody? And so here I am trying to explain it, and I hope that you can feel sort of what I was feeling in that moment. But
I can. You know what I think is interesting? I think that when people choose doubt, that's where they sit, and it's an easy place to sit. It's an easy place to get stuck, I guess, is a good way to say it. It's those experiences that you have. It's not just the actual experience; it's the energy and the knowing, the connectivity, the actual connection with
yeah,
that being that is giving you the information, whose energy you're almost wrapped in that moment, that makes the experience so impactful. And so I think that if somebody is sitting in doubt, or if they just aren't in a place of belief or faith or knowing, that it would be easy to take any story and pull it apart and go, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. But it's interesting when you ask, after you told the story, you asked the question, I don't know if you can feel that. We can feel it when we've had the experience, when we've had those experiences ourselves. And particularly if we've had many of them, or um, it's a little harder to remember the energy if there's a one-off experience,
yeah,
uh, punctuated, every so many years, or separated by many years. But when you have them regularly, when you're open to them, when you move through life with your eyes open and allowing and available for those sorts of experiences, and you hear somebody else's experience, you can not only understand the energy of it and the telling of it better, because you know all of the things that are behind it, but you can feel that. And the understanding of it changes entirely, I think.
yeah. So for me, that was immediately a doubt remover for me. The moment that I began to even question it, there was no questioning it. It was so in my face at that point, and such the representation of her energy and everything that I felt I couldn't unfeel. I couldn't unexperience it. I couldn't unsee that light. I couldn't unsee the lightning striking and the light going back out. And all of that came with me right into the next experience that I would have. And it was like every time she would show up, and continues to, every time I even mention or talk to her or about her, I can feel her come in.
And then the other question I have is, when you have that kind of connectivity with somebody who crosses, does it make it easier for you to not be sad?
Yeah.
Because there doesn't appear to be, um, when you talk about this, there doesn't appear to be any sadness, which I think is beautiful.
If I think of, I mean, I could let myself go there. I could decide to be sad. I could decide that I would rather she was here. But, but I can't have both experiences at the same time. And this gift that I've been given, that she and I have been given, that I'm able to share, that other people are able to experience, and in essence also be given. Okay, I can't take that back. It's precious. There's something so beyond. That's the only word that I can find. There's something so beyond about it, beyond me, beyond you, beyond anything. And it's real. It's experiential. And so yeah, I could bring myself back down to a lower vibration and be like, I'm mad. She's not here. I want her to be here. But I can't have both. And this is beautiful. The experience that I've been given, the path that I've taken with her, learning everything that I've learned through her and with her. I mean, she brought me into this work. She was one of the guides that paved the way for me.
Well, and like literally figured like
Mhm.
bodily.
Yeah, literally, figuratively, metaphorically, like all the things, right? Because she's my
Yeah.
mom.
Yeah.
And so I there's times when I feel sad. I don't know. Because I wish I could just give her a hug, but what I'm doing now with her, I wouldn't trade this for a hug. I really wouldn't. And that sounds kind of strange because there are so many, I hear it over and over again. It's something that you hear humans say. And I'd give anything to just see them again. I see her every day.
It's a paradigm shift for sure. Um, it's it isn't just a nice story to tell ourselves so that
No.
we can cope better for a moment or in a moment. It really is a choice to embrace all the parts, all the pieces that occur as they occur on this plane, and all of the tools that we have available to us, the connectivity that we have available to us, and the continuation of those relationships in a really beautiful way, different
Yeah.
than they once were before somebody crosses over, but in a really beautiful way and in a very accessible way. And it's the kind of thing I believe that whether you're one who is involved in the practice of intuitive, all the intuitive work that shows up, all of the intuitive stuff that shows up, or whether you're somebody who thinks that you don't or you can't or whatever the case may be, that isn't accurate. Um, all of us have the ability to do this on different levels and with different levels of interest, and based on what your journey is and how open you choose to be and how much time you want to put into it. But it's the kind of thing that anybody can learn to do, and I think it's so important to hear people who have that connection to their loved ones on the other side talk about it, because there are a lot of people that are hurting, and there are a lot of people that are experiencing um, just big upheaval in their lives when somebody crosses over. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that there won't be any sadness or that there won't be any missing them in body, but that it doesn't need to be what it sometimes or often is.
That's so true. I I was sad for a long time. Even after that initial experience, I was still sad. That had me so confused. I knew, I was very certain of what I had experienced, but confused in what it meant in my life and what it meant about who I am and what I'm capable of and what is my journey? What does this mean on my path? It brought in a lot of confusion, I won't lie. But I was sad still, even after that experience, through the process of, I guess, figuring all of that out.
Well, and there's grieving, right? So there,
Yeah.
there's going to be sadness. I think there's going to be. I'm not for a moment suggesting that there will be no grieving, no sadness, no, all of the things that one experiences, anger, even, all of the things that one experiences, depending on the significance of the relationship. And I still think that we could move through it with maybe a little bit more ease. Um, I'm going to say that differently. I believe that we could move through it with more ease if we practice that connectivity, if we take advantage, if we reach out and we learn how to how to how to do it ourselves, how to recognize whether we get somebody's help or we don't get somebody's help. If you don't want to learn how to do it, getting somebody else's help, or getting somebody else's help to learn how to do it. I think that it is a tool that is not used, that is in our bag when we experience something like that.
Yeah. Not used. A tool that's not used. It makes me think immediately of my best friend who died in 2011. I met my husband at his funeral.
Well, I'm sorry and congratulations.
There's no sadness left there either. I've realized, and it's funny that we're talking about this because this is a realization that's just sort of come through for me within the past couple of days. Joe and I were just talking about Jean, my best friend who passed away of lung cancer, and watching the birds come to the bird feeder that he built, and talking about the way that we met and what would he think of, everything that's going on in the world. And I could feel him come in. I could feel him come in. I don't remember what drew me to bring that up.
Tools not used.
Yeah, because I guess what I was feeling was the difference in the way that I was able to process my mom dying in a very different way from processing his death years and years before. And there was a lot more sadness and anger, much, much more, when he passed.
My puppy is eating a shoe. No.
It's a much different way of processing. It really is, to have that tool and to have that awareness and to experience that shift in perspective through connectivity versus not having that awareness. Yeah, it just kind of came into my field. I suppose the way that my mom showed up for me and allowed me to process her death, her passing over, her physical death, it shifted my relationship with him as well. Really, really cool. Really cool experience. Cool doesn't quite do it justice, but how about you?
Death?
Yeah.
Well, I've had a lot of that in the last 11 months.
You have.
All non-human animals. And so I think a lot of people would, I don't know, maybe diminish those relationships or think, oh, that's easier. I don't know that that's true. I think it depends on a lot of things. But I have had such beautiful experiences in and around those moments, after those moments, um, the gifts that have come through. Jay, my dog Jay, was the first one to cross over last year. And 3 days after, so he was fine, he was well. And then on a Tuesday, I think it was, he was very lethargic and didn't want to eat. And so we got into I waited a day to see if it would go away, and it didn't. I think I called the vet Wednesday. We got in on Friday, and he had cancer that was significant on his spleen. His spleen was, um, he wasn't in pain, but it was beginning to, I guess, rupture, um, or it was going to rupture. So, you know, we were there. We were at the vet almost all day. There were all kinds. There were X-rays and ultrasounds and all kinds of things that were done to get a good picture of what was going on. And gosh, the magic that was around that one was so cool because actually, what happened one day before, so we were at the vet on called for. He showed up acting strangely Tuesday. Called for the appointment Wednesday. Got in Friday. On Thursday, a client of mine called and was needing to their cat had had a stroke and her cat had had a stroke and he was not going to recover. It was going to get worse and worse and worse. And she didn't think that that was something that he was going to deal with well. And so it was the kind of thing where a communication was needed and a decision needed to be, she was making a decision that she wanted to explain to him. And that was the first time that I had been in that circumstance. I've been in lots of end of life decisions, but it was the first time that I've been in the circumstance of having facilitating a communication to explain to somebody your life is going to you're going to leave your physical body. This life is going to come to an end. Let me help you understand what your human is thinking, and make sure that you're okay with this decision as well. And it was just the first time that I found myself in that decision. Like, this is happening. Let's help you get to where your mom is, basically, if you're open to that. And the gift in that was that less than 24 hours later, I was doing the exact same thing with my Jay. And it made it easier because when you're dealing with your own stuff, it is different than when you're dealing with everybody else's stuff. There's a clarity that is just really easy for me to find in the work that I do with everybody else. And I don't do it as much in my own life. It's like the carpenter who makes everybody else's homes beautiful and his home is never finished, or her home is never finished.
Or the photographer who never takes pictures of her own kids.
Yeah. So I don't communicate with my family members as often as maybe somebody might think that I do. And I should restate that. I communicate with them all the time. I just don't step out of life and do the whole, the depth of the process in the same way in my own life on a regular basis. I do it sometimes, but just not as often. And when your own emotions and your own, headspace and whatnot, you can allow that to get in the way. It does not have to get in the way, certainly. And so it was a real gift to have been in that exact same circumstance 24 hours prior to, and be able to feel my way right back into that energy, and in a much more certain and confident way than I suspect I know for a fact that didn't happen. Hey, honey, stop it. That didn't. The little puppy is feeling her oats. She likes to push the boundaries with her big brother these days. Hey, stop that. Anyway, now she's gonna leave. Okay. In a way, that was provided for me because I was able to, because it was helpful, because I needed it, or it wouldn't have happened. No such thing as coincidences or accidents. And so I was able to slide right into that energy and facilitate the exact same thing that day for myself and Jay. And that part of the situation was amazing. Then what happened was 3 days after he crossed, and it was a peaceful, lovely passing, very quick. 3 days after he crossed, I got to participate in his ascension ceremony, which I never would have. I've had all kinds of interactions with loved ones after they've crossed over, particularly non-human animals. But I had never experienced anything like what I experienced after he crossed over. Um, there was the getting to see him almost in a cocoon-like state. I'm doing a real short version of this. That sort of, um, oh, I don't know how I can do a short version of this. Uh, I was taken to another place, um, and there were angels there, there were loved ones there of all forms. Nobody was in form. Um, they were energetic beings. Uh, and there was a welcoming, there was like an ushering. Um, there was there was an actual ceremony that was the oddest thing because I was participating in it on both sides. I was watching it as me, but I was participating in it, and my soul, my energetic self on the other side as well. Um, there was a lot of um, I don't know, the best word that I can think of is recognition, but that doesn't begin to do it justice. That's not really the right word. Um, there's too much potential value or judgment that goes with that word that does not exist.
I just heard accolade.
Accolade, yeah, accolade would be better for sure. Um, but it wasn't like an award ceremony. It was just quite literally like a um, loving um, recognition of service, I guess, and um, and accolade, uh, an accomplishment, and a completion of a commitment, um, of a contract, of a you know um, job well done, which also doesn't begin to do justice to what was being experienced.
Right.
Um, and I don't honestly have any idea how long I was there. I don't know how long that went on.
That's gonna be my question. I was gonna ask you how long, how much Earth time does this take?
I don't know because I laid down. It was night. I laid down in the grass in the backyard, and uh, and and went elsewhere, or connected with the elsewhere, and um, connected with the elsewhere, and um, my eyes were closed, and I was in that circumstance for a long time. What felt like a long time. I was very relaxed when it was over, um, and I remember prior to having closed my eyes, I could see. Actually, I was both seeing with my third eye and seeing right in front of me, Jay in that cocoon state that I had mentioned. And when I opened my eyes and was fully back on this plane, I was just seeing a grinning Jay, grinning Jay. It was not Jay in a cocoon state of any sort. Um, and uh, what was then really cool about that is, so I live in Arizona, and most of the time it's not cloudy here. This was in April. The weather was lovely. Um, Rarely are there clouds in the sky at all, and if they are, the clouds that were there that night were a little bit unusual. There was no wind, but the clouds were moving very quickly, which that's unusual. Um, there was no wind at this level anyway, and it's unusual for the clouds to move that quickly when there's just no wind down at this level. And there were cloud formations that were very distinct, but there were not a lot of clouds in the sky at all. It was a very bright moonlit night, and when I opened my eyes, my attention was drawn to a cloud that was just off to my left a little bit, and I saw his face, smiling face, and then I looked over at the cloud, and he was clearly in the cloud. And I was, for my first thought, if I'm being completely honest, was you've got a great imagination, um, you know, and the whole, it's a cloud, um, cat, it's a cloud. It's like let it go. It's just a cloud, whatever. But as I'm saying this in my head, it is becoming more and more and more and more clear. And there was absolutely no way to ignore that it was taking perfect shape. And it was it was about the transition. It was about where we started and then what he was off to. And it was, I mean, honestly, I I've called on him for assistance from the other side in what he now does. I don't know how many times, a whole bunch of times, and he has shown up um, in so many significant ways in my life. And I did cry after not bringing his body home because physically, I mean, I love him and I miss him. I missed him, I would say. I don't feel like he's not here anymore. So I wouldn't say I miss him, but I missed him in that moment. The loss was palpable. Um, and he was such a physical presence in my life. He was such a that boy, that dog moved energy like no one I have ever met. The strength and purity of his energy and what he was able to sense, feel, do, move was absolutely otherworldly. And he isn't in my home physically doing that with me anymore.
Right.
So I miss that. Um, I don't think I realized what a gift. I don't think I appreciated that quite as much as I could have while he was here. Um, I certainly did appreciate him and that and all of the other things about him too, but um, I could have appreciated it more. Uh, but I don't miss him. He always shows up. He Yeah, I don't cry. I'm not sad when I think about him. Um, he shows up all the time. He and is able to interact. Um, I have called on him a number of times to assist in escorting others across, and um, he's got,
It's hard to miss somebody that you still feel really close to.
yeah,
You
right.
are with you.
It is, and I guess that's the whole point. And then my Marvin crossed in December, and Pants the bird crossed in January, and Petunia, my cat, crossed last week. Um, and all of them, I could go into stories about every single one of them. Um, they're not all ascension ceremony stories. They would be very individual stories, each one of them. Ways in which um, what has occurred was absolutely beautiful. The everything that led up to it, the event itself, and the what since. So it's
Can you talk a little bit about how Jay assists you?
okay. So
You mentioned it and it just never left my awareness after you said that. So I'm super curious because you talked about the way that he moved energy here in this realm. Is that part of the gift that he took with him?
So Jay is literally an angel. I don't think people talk very much about angels incarnating as non-human animals. I've never heard anybody talk about that before. But I am not just saying he was angelic. Um, uh, Jay is an angel on the other side, and he decided to come here as in the body of dog. And um, so there are the lessons that I learned from him. Um, Lessons in ways of being, as well as embodiment, as well as um, energetic, working with energy, all the ways, recognizing it, being in it, saying, I'm going to say, like almost cleansing it, moving it, um, and
Transmuting.
transmuting, but love, I would say. The way I would say it, what I'm getting is like injecting love into a situation on a level that I think is uncommon. Um, Working with that energy, love energy, and bringing that into the interactions. Um, uh, there's been a whole education, and then I would say since he's crossed over, um, he shows up. Sometimes I don't ask, and he shows up um, when I benefit from his support, which isn't always there. And I don't know if that's and I'm not fully embodying something, and he shows up and helps me to get to that place, or if it's something different. Because there are times that he comes when I haven't asked, um, and there are. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm hearing things. There's self judgment in there that doesn't need to be. There's a part of my team. There's a big team I'm a part of on the other side. I'm on the other side and on this side. We're all working as a team. I'm just a part of the team, and he is a part of that team also. And sometimes members of the team will come in, and sometimes they will go out. And no different than when Arcturians show up uninvited, or Jasper shows Jasper. That's a whole nother story. Shows up uninvited. They're members of the team, and occasionally people or entities that are not members of the team, that are not regular members of the team, will show up and assist as well. Uh, Based on the larger vision and the larger contract and movement and what's coming that I, as a human, am not necessarily fully aware of all the time. So that would be a better answer as to why he shows up sometimes when I'm not asking him to show up. But the when I ask him to show up, um, oftentimes it's when I sense a level of uncertainty, when I sense a level of, and that can look like fear, it can look like other things as well, um, that uh, I believe will benefit from an escort and that energy that I've only ever felt from him on this plane. Um, it's an absolutely unique energy signature. So the other thing that I will say is, this is going to come way out of left field. There's a new dog in my life, only she's not. This is the fourth time she's been with me in this lifetime. Um, and I became aware last summer that she would be returning again. There was communication about that. There was a dream that made it really, really clear. And the gift in that, this pertains to Jay. She is a being who always comes in wolf or dog form, um, as herself. We've walked many lifetimes together, but this time she's wrapped in the energy of Jay. Literally, she is the being who comes and goes with me, um, and she is wrapped in the energy of Jay. I don't know how else to explain that. And that's not something that I had ever experienced in this lifetime before either. So,
Interesting.
yeah, it is interesting. There's all kinds of coming and going. And um, the how they get, how they get to you, that's always interesting, how they find me. Um, but yeah, I'm rambling. But
Interesting. It's interesting the way that, I don't know, it makes me think of a couple of things. It makes me think a bit on the way that we're connected to other humans. And then that just immediately branches out to all other beings and connected on the earth, connected through the veil, just ultimately connected in ways that we don't fully understand. But we do, but we don't.
we don't always remember all the details when we get back to this side, right? But we can reclaim them. I mean, they come, the more attention that you give them, the more you ask for, going into your Akashic records
Mhm.
and see, you know what? I'm going to say something differently. I feel like I do understand how it all works. I do. I don't mean every single thing. I know, I don't. That sounds like a ridiculous statement. I kind of do mean that actually. Um, uh, I wouldn't say what I would say is I feel very comfortable in the flow and management and in the knowing of
Soul movement.
soul movement, and I feel very comfortable in the knowing, in the familiarity, in the understanding of this, what I always refer to as this experiment, this plane, this experiential plane. Um,
The way we arrive and leave and
and why and how. And I mean, you can't interact with the other side as regularly. Somebody who interacts with the other side of the veil, somebody who has a team on the other side of the veil, who's always assisting others and doing regressions and progressions and accessing the information in the records. And when you're doing that for different people all the time and all the things that are coming up all the time, you become very familiar with how the whole, and I'm also, there's more than that. There are things that,
yeah.
um, that I'm not entirely comfortable saying because they would sound ridiculous to a lot of people. Um, that's the truth. Uh, but yeah, I feel like I'm very familiar. I feel like you are too. You've been here a million times, forever. And there's a familiarity that comes with that. You know, when every time we come, we do this work, and we do. Every time we come, we do this work. Um, there's a familiarity that even when you're in this lifetime or the next lifetime starting the journey over again, and there's some things that you come in blind to, or not blind to, but with covering, um, and the that journey that gets facilitated, all of the particulars, what it looks like, the things that will create difficulty that you'll need to overcome, that will facilitate that journey, that will help you to elucidate, all the things that need to be on that particular journey, the things that you need to struggle with in order to better understand and help others do this thing, that thing, or the other thing, or um, uh, and also develop the things that you need to, the things that you choose to put in your path so that you can develop a really strong muscle in that area based on whatever you're going to ultimately accomplish in that one. um, Honestly, the stuff becomes so obvious at a certain point that it's almost cliche, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so evident through the way that every experience comes in its own synchronicity, and it shows up for you in a, I don't know, everyone calls it a coincidence, right? You
I,
know
I
what I mean?
think that's the thing is it is so accessible
Mhm.
and it is so obvious sometimes
Yeah.
that I think it seems too good or too easy or too whatever to be true because yeah, I've said this a million times, but we arrive here with this full tool bag, which everybody works so hard immediately to dismantle through socialization and verbalization. You know, the more we verbalize, the less we tend to communicate non-verbally. And I think the areas where most people experience that in a significant way that they could relate to are with babies, human babies, and their non-human family members. You know, whether it's a dog or a cat or a bird or
Yeah.
it is they're choosing to share their life with. There's absolutely communication there. You know what those other beings want and need um, without the verbalization, and it is just that simple. You know, to be able to communicate non-verbally with all of the other beings on this plane, all of them, trees, every sort of, you know, aquatic animal, mammal, flying animal, plant animal, all of the life forms. It's no more crazy than it is that we're talking to each other out loud verbally. This is the most limited form of communication that there is.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's a very limiting experience to be human.
Yeah. No, and I don't know. It made me think of how this conversation might have gone differently had we not been able to see each other. Right?
It does go differently, and also there's no deception in nonverbal communication. There's no twisting. There's no lying. There's no anything other than presentation, exact presentation of what is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's all there is. It cannot be bastardized. It's the purest form of communication that exists. And
Agreed.
yeah, it's amazing. And I think we all spend so much time thinking, you know, or so many human animals spend so much time thinking that they're so much better or elevated or more than the rest of the beings here who've chosen to incarnate in different form. And that's just not true.
What a fun conversation.
Ours are always, to me, anyway, but I think they're always amazing, super interesting to me.
I knew that I knew that this conversation would lead us somewhere. I don't know. It feels deep, but it also feels very light.
I agree with you. It is just, we are kind of skating on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
are. We are completely skating on the surface.
I feel like this could be a whole second show.
Yeah, yeah. Don't you feel that way always with whatever shows up
Yes.
in the space?
Yeah.
Always. I think I if you had to like slap a theme on this conversation, what would you say it was?
I heard resilience come up, but I'm not sure how to. It's energetic resilience through awareness.
That's the exact same thing I got. I'm going to say it a different way,
Do
but
it. Do it. Do it.
I'm saying the exact same thing, and that's um, the benefit of communication, connectivity, the benefit of connectivity to all the rest that there is here um, in our lives, which it produces resilience. It produces movement and facilitates ease and comfort in a way that I think nothing else can.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much for being here with me today. We had a light show, a light crew, but boy, if this hasn't been an interesting and I hope eye-opening conversation for anyone that might be listening who could be on this path or confused about what they're experiencing or looking for a way to experience someone in a new way who they feel is no longer with them. What would you say, Kat? I was going to close, but I have a question. And we're here together alone, so we get to do what we want.
That's right.
What would you say if you had to earmark one particular method or tool for that connectivity?
A way for somebody to learn to do it.
What would it be? Yeah.
Oh God, there's so many different ways.
I know. And that's why I'm like, let's just pick one. What's the first thing that kind of comes up?
So as far as a place of learning, I think one of the most helpful things is to, as you're falling asleep, when you go to bed at night, or if you're taking a nap, whatever, as you're relaxing and letting go, call whoever it is that you want to connect with, call out to them, ask them to join you. Because, and the reason that I'm saying as you're falling asleep is because what happens as you start to transition out of, your waking state and going into that sleep state, the head begins to let go. And you find yourself at some point in an in-between state that I think tends to be a very lucid, open kind of state. And so for people who are developing that awareness, developing, re-exercising, reclaiming that skill, I think it's a great place to do it. The question is, will you remember it? Sometimes it happens and it's so jarring or so exciting. I don't mean jarring in a bad way, but like, it's so like, oh my gosh, that it'll jerk you right out of that state. And you might lose connectivity, or you might just relax right into that and then go off into sleep and wake knowing that it happened, but won't remember all the details. All those things happen, but it's a great place to start, whether you remember all the details or not.
I would agree. Thank you for that. Yeah, that hypnagogic state is really good for that. Really, really a good jumping off point for exercising that muscle.
What would yours be?
Breath. Breath. And again, sort of with the same spoken intention, calling out to the person that you want to connect with, the being, and bringing yourself into connectivity with that being through the breath. You can envision breathing them in, calling in that energy. And I usually drop it right down into the heart and just let it sit there and just wait. Wait to feel whatever it is that you're going to feel. Breath work.
Really good point. Getting out of the head space and down into the heart space, because this is where it happens.
Mm-hmm. Instead of asking a bazillion questions and questioning what you're doing, just drop into the heart and be patient. Give yourself grace to experience whatever it is that you're going to experience in that moment, and not prejudge it or have an expectation for what it should be, and just let it be what it is. And breathe that in.
Brilliant.
Thank you. We're out of time for today. But we're super happy to be here and hope that you have found value in this conversation today. We hope you'll join us again next week. We're here every Sunday. Let's see, can we give the rundown? 10 Pacific, 11 Mountain, 12 Central, 1 Eastern.
Nicely done.
Yeah, thanks. Every Sunday, right here, live with the Muses. We'll see you again soon. Thank you so much.